Red lights flashed in every corridor of Harmony 7 station. The automated voice repeated its warning for the third time, each word making the situation sound more dire. Every speaker in the massive structure blared the same message. Lockdown protocols were active, and something dangerous was loose. Commander Vril's 4 compound eyes focused on the security screens with growing horror. His chitinous fingers clicked nervously against the console as he rewound the footage again. There, clear as starlight, a small creature prowled through the human residential sector. It moved with the fluid grace of a born killer, muscles rippling under fur, eyes glowing in the dim light of the corridor. "How did this happen?" Vril demanded, his translator struggling to convey his distress. "How did an unregistered predator get aboard my station?" Dr. Nellis, whose species had evolved in peaceful swamps far from any natural predators, stared at the creature on screen. His skin had gone pale green with fear. "I've checked the Earth database. This is a Felis catus, descended from desert ambush predators. Retractable claws for silent approach, forward-facing eyes for tracking prey, flexible spine allowing impossible movement. Success rate in hunting is 85%. 85%? Liaison Arim's feathers ruffled in alarm. The avian diplomat had dealt with many crisis situations, but this was unprecedented. "We need to evacuate the civilian sectors." "Already done," Vril said, mandibles clicking. "But we have a bigger problem. The creature has entered the environmental gardens. That's 17 acres of vegetation, water features, and hiding spots. It could be anywhere." Security teams assembled throughout the station. Most had never dealt with a predator before. The galaxy was a civilized place, where dangerous animals were kept on their homeworlds or in specialized facilities with multiple redundancies. Seeing one loose on a civilian station had turned their training into useless theory. The insectoid security chief pulled up more information on humans and their homeworld. What he found didn't reassure him. Earth had hundreds of apex predators, creatures that could kill beings twice their size. Animals with venom, claws, teeth designed for ripping flesh. And humans lived among them. Some humans even sought them out deliberately. What kind of species evolves on a planet like that? Vril muttered. Rim was trying to contact the human resident in whose quarters the creature had been registered. A chef named Henry Walsh who ran a restaurant on the promenade. His communicator went unanswered. The diplomat tried again. "Nothing. Find him," Vril ordered. "If this human brought a predator aboard, he needs to contain it immediately." Security footage tracked the creature's movement through the gardens. It paused near a cluster of Greln citizens, peaceful herbivores who stood frozen in terror as the small predator approached. Then, inexplicably, it ignored them and continued toward the artificial stream. "It's toying with them," Dr. Nellis whispered. "Classic predator behavior, establishing dominance over its territory." 2 security teams converged on the gardens from opposite entrances. They moved in full armor, carrying tranquilizer rifles and plasma nets. The protocols were clear: subdue the threat, contain it, and determine how it had escaped proper quarantine. The creature sat near the water, apparently unaware of the armed forces surrounding it. Its tail swished back and forth in a rhythmic pattern that Dr. Nellis noted might be a pre-attack behavior. The security team leader raised his tranquilizer rifle. "Wait!" A human voice cut through the tense silence. Henry Walsh appeared at the garden entrance, still wearing his white chef's apron. Flour dusted his shoulder from whatever he'd been baking. He carried a small container and looked more annoyed than concerned. The security teams turned to him in confusion. "Everyone stand down," Henry said calmly. He walked right past the armed guards toward the predator. "You're making a fuss over nothing." "Sir, that creature is extremely dangerous," Vril's voice came through the security team's communicators. "Please step back and let the professionals handle this." Henry ignored the warning. He knelt down near the water and opened the container. "Mittens." "Dinner time, you little troublemaker." The predator's ears perked up. It turned, saw Henry, and made a sound that Dr. Nellis's database identified as a vocalization used during hunting. The security teams tensed. The creature approached the human in a low crouch, muscles coiled. Then it rubbed against Henry's leg and began making a rumbling noise. "Good girl," Henry said, scratching behind the creature's ears. "I know you wanted to explore, but you scared everyone half to death." He scooped up the small animal and stood, facing the security teams. "Gentlemen, meet Mittens. She's a cat. Harmless, I promise." The security team leader lowered his rifle slowly. That's the apex predator? She's 7 pounds of fluff and attitude, Henry said. Mittens, apparently comfortable in his arms, continued making that strange rumbling noise. She probably got out when I opened my door this morning. Didn't mean to cause a panic. Vrill's voice crackled through every communicator. Mr. Walsh, please report to my office immediately. Bring Mittens. Within the hour, Henry found himself in the station commander's office, surrounded by what looked like the entire security council. Mittens sat contentedly in his lap, occasionally licking her paw and rubbing it over her face. The council members stared at her with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. Let me understand this correctly, Vrill said, reviewing the documentation Henry had provided. You deliberately keep this predator in your living quarters? For companionship? That's what pets are, yes, Henry replied. And on Earth, millions of humans do this? Billions, actually. Cats are one of the most popular pets. Dr. Nellis leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. But why? What purpose does it serve to cohabit with a predator? Henry smiled and stroked Mittens, who purred louder. They're cute. They're affectionate. They help with stress. Some people say they're good for mental health. The council exchanged looks of complete bewilderment. Orem spoke up. Mr. Walsh, I've received formal complaints from 12 different species about the presence of this predator on the station. Several delegations are threatening to leave if the creature isn't properly contained. Contained? Henry looked down at Mittens, who had rolled onto her back in his lap, exposing her belly. She's a house cat, not a weapon. Nevertheless, Vrill said firmly, we must implement proper safety protocols. The creature must be kept in secured quarters with reinforced doors, sensor monitoring, and emergency containment procedures. Daily inspections will be mandatory. Henry sighed but nodded. If that's what it takes to avoid a diplomatic incident. Thank you for your cooperation, Orem said, relief evident in his voice. They implemented the new protocols that same day. Henry's quarters were fitted with reinforced doors, motion sensors, and emergency barriers. A security team was assigned to monitor Mittens' location at all times. Dr. Nellis installed tracking devices. Everything was documented, triple-checked, and approved by the council. 20 minutes after Henry sealed the secured quarters, alarms began blaring again. Security footage showed Mittens casually walking through the promenade, tail held high. Vrill watched the screen in disbelief. How? The investigation would reveal that Mittens had squeezed through a ventilation duct that engineers had insisted was too small for any creature her size. But that discovery wouldn't come until after she'd escaped 6 more times. 3 days of unsuccessful containment had left Commander Vrill looking exhausted. His compound eyes were dimmed from lack of sleep, and his usually precise movements had become jerky with stress. The emergency council meeting he'd called was packed with representatives from 17 different species, all demanding answers. Henry sat in the designated human chair, Mittens purring in his lap as if this was the most natural thing in the universe. The cat's eyes were half closed in contentment, completely oblivious to the chaos she'd caused. Around the room, various species representatives kept their distance, watching the small orange creature with expressions of suspicion and fear. 7 escapes, Vrill began, his voice tight with frustration. In 3 days. We've reinforced the doors twice. We've sealed the ventilation system. We've installed motion sensors, heat sensors, and pressure plates. How is this possible? Dr. Nellis projected a holographic display of Mittens' escape routes. The 3-dimensional map showed an impossibly complex network of paths through maintenance shafts, air ducts, and spaces that engineering had sworn were inaccessible. The creature's skeletal structure is remarkably flexible. She can compress her rib cage to fit through any opening her skull can pass through. Combined with her natural stealth capabilities and problem-solving intelligence, she's effectively impossible to contain using standard protocols. A representative from the Grelm delegation stood, his long ears quivering with indignation. This is unacceptable. Yesterday that creature stalked me through the market corridor. I feared for my life. She rubbed against your leg, Henry said quietly. That's how cats show affection. It felt like a threat assessment, the Grelm insisted. She was testing my defenses. Orem, who'd spent the last 3 days mediating between angry delegations and the human resident, spread his wings in a calming gesture. Perhaps we need to better understand the human-predator relationship. Mr. Walsh, can you explain why your species deliberately cohabits with these creatures? Henry looked around the room at the assembled aliens, trying to find the right words. On Earth, we've lived alongside animals for thousands of years. We domesticated them, bred them to be companions rather than threats. Cats haven't been wild predators for millennia. They're part of our families. But the predatory instincts remain, Dr. Nellis interjected, pulling up footage of Mittens stalking a robot cleaning unit the previous day. Observe the hunting posture, the focused attention, the pouncing behavior. She was playing, Henry protested. Playing at hunting, the doctor corrected. The instincts are hardwired into her neural pathways. Vril pulled up another display, this one showing statistics from Earth's internet. I've been researching human-cat interactions. According to these sources, cats kill billions of small animals annually on Earth. Birds, rodents, reptiles. They're described as one of the most efficient predators in Earth's ecosystem. Feral cats, maybe, Henry argued. Mittens has never killed anything in her life. She eats processed food from a can. That doesn't change her biological capabilities, Vril countered. He looked genuinely disturbed by what he'd learned. Your species took an apex predator and made it smaller, cuter, and more efficient. Then you invited millions of them into your homes. This is unprecedented behavior in galactic society. Around the room, other representatives nodded in agreement. The concept of pet ownership was foreign to most of them. Species either dominated their ecosystems as predators or had evolved to flee from danger. The idea of purposefully living with a predator, even a small one, seemed insane. Orim tried another approach. What other animals do humans keep as companions? Henry hesitated, realizing this might not help his case. Well, dogs are even more popular than cats. Dogs? Dr. Nellis pulled up information on canines. His skin went even paler. Pack hunters, descended from wolves, stronger bite force than cats, larger, more aggressive hunting strategies. He turned to Henry in disbelief. You kept the cats and the wolves? We domesticated them too, Henry said defensively. They're loyal, friendly, protective. They help with security, rescue work, therapy. You domesticated them for function, Vril said slowly, understanding dawning. Not just companionship, both, Henry admitted. But mostly because we love them. The room fell silent as the various species tried to process this information. Finally, a representative from the aquatic Dwarven people spoke up. What else have you domesticated? Henry listed them. Horses, cattle, chickens, rabbits, birds, hamsters, guinea pigs, reptiles, fish. With each addition to the list, the expressions around the room grew more incredulous. When he mentioned that some humans kept spiders and snakes as pets, several representatives actually left the room. Your entire species has a predator integration compulsion, Dr. Nellis concluded, furiously taking notes. This isn't just about cats. This is fundamental to human psychology. You don't just coexist with predators. You actively seek them out and form emotional bonds with them. We call it animal husbandry, Henry offered. We call it insanity, Vril muttered. Orim, however, looked thoughtful. But it works for them. Humans have successfully integrated hundreds of species into their society. Perhaps there's something we can learn from this. Learn? The Greln representative looked horrified. You want us to bring predators into our homes? I want us to understand why it works for humans, Orim clarified. Understanding leads to peaceful coexistence. The debate continued for another hour. Various security measures were proposed and rejected. Someone suggested confining Henry and Mittens to the human quarters indefinitely, but Orim pointed out the diplomatic ramifications. Another representative wanted Mittens removed from the station entirely, but that would require paperwork that could take months. Throughout all of this, Mittens dozed peacefully in Henry's lap, occasionally opening one eye to observe the proceedings before going back to sleep. At one point she yawned, showing her sharp teeth, and 3 council members flinched. Finally, Vril made his decision. The creature will remain under enhanced containment protocols. Mr. Walsh, you will be responsible for ensuring she doesn't escape again. Daily inspections will continue. Any further incidents will result in immediate removal from the station. Understood, Henry said, though he didn't sound optimistic. This meeting is adjourned, Vril announced. Dr. Nellis, I want a full threat assessment on my desk by tomorrow. Include information on these other Earth creatures humans have domesticated. We need to be prepared if more humans bring animals aboard. As the council members filed out, still casting nervous glances at Mittens, Orim approached Henry. I'm sorry about all this. I know she's harmless, do you? Henry asked quietly.
Or are you just being diplomatic?
Orem considered the question honestly. I'm trying to understand. It's just very different from how my people view predators. We fly away from them, not toward them. Maybe that's why we're different, Henry said, stroking Mittens gently. We stopped running and decided to make friends instead. That evening, Henry installed the newest containment measures in his quarters. Reinforced barriers, additional sensors, backup systems for the backup systems. He made sure Mittens had food, water, and her favorite sleeping spot by the environmental window. Be good, he told her as he engaged the locks. Mittens meowed once, then curled up in her bed. Henry made it halfway to his restaurant before the alarm started again. He didn't even break stride, just changed direction toward wherever Mittens had appeared this time. Behind him, he could hear Vril's anguished cry echoing through the station's communication system. It was going to be a long week. Station efficiency reports showed a 15% drop in productivity across all sectors. The reason, according to Dr. Nellis's latest analysis, was collective anxiety. Workers kept watching shadows, listening for soft footfalls, checking corners before entering rooms. The invisible presence of one small cat had put hundreds of beings on edge. Engineering Chief Torvin studied the schematics of Harmony 7 with growing frustration. He'd designed systems for this station, knew every corridor and conduit. Yet somehow, a creature weighing less than 4 kilograms had found routes he didn't know existed. She's using the old maintenance network, he explained to Vril, pointing at obsolete passages on the blueprint. These were supposed to be sealed decades ago. Then seal them now, Vril ordered. We tried. She found new routes within hours. Torvin pulled up security footage from the previous night. Mittens squeezed through a gap between 2 wall panels that looked barely wide enough for a data cable. She's mapping the entire station. Look at the pattern of her movements. The footage compiled over several days showed Mittens' journeys through Harmony 7. She visited every major section, residential quarters, commercial zones, engineering spaces, even the restricted areas near the fusion core. Her path formed a systematic patrol route that covered the station's full layout. She's establishing territory, Dr. Nellis said, watching the footage with scientific fascination that had begun to override his initial fear. Classic predator behavior. She's claiming the entire station as her hunting ground. Vril's mandibles clicked in distress. We can't have a predator treating this station like its personal domain. I'm not sure we have a choice, Torvin admitted. The sightings had become routine. A Greln merchant reported Mittens sitting in his shop window watching customers pass. An engineering team found her napping on a warm power conduit. The medical staff discovered her in their supply closet, apparently fascinated by the movement of their diagnostic equipment. None of these encounters resulted in violence, but they kept everyone nervous. Henry continued his work at the restaurant, seemingly unconcerned by the chaos his cat was causing. Other humans on the station found the situation amusing but stayed quiet, not wanting to draw attention. One human engineer, Patricia, had even been caught on security footage deliberately leaving certain access panels slightly ajar. Are you helping the cat escape? Vril had demanded when confronted. Patricia had just shrugged. I'm not helping her. She does that fine on her own. I'm just not making it harder than it needs to be. The punishment for that admission was a formal reprimand and mandatory retraining on security protocols. But Vril suspected other humans were doing the same thing and just being more subtle about it. Orem had started visiting the Cozy Kettle regularly, ostensibly for diplomatic check-ins, but really out of growing curiosity about human-animal relationships. He'd watch Mittens navigate the restaurant space, weaving between customers, accepting scratches from brave patrons, occasionally hopping onto empty chairs. Doesn't it bother you? Orem asked Henry during one visit, knowing she's out there going wherever she wants and you can't control her. Henry flipped a pancake with practiced ease. That's just how cats are. They're independent. You don't really own a cat, you just coexist with one. But on a space station, that independence could be dangerous. Could be, Henry agreed. But it isn't. She's not hurting anyone. That assumption was tested the following week when alarms blared in the lower cargo bay. Toxic gas leak sensors reported. Automated systems sealed the section and began emergency ventilation procedures. Atmospheric readings showed dangerous levels of nitrogen oxide spreading through the bay. Evacuation confirmed, the duty officer reported. All personnel accounted for. Wait, another technician interrupted, checking her roster. We have 2 Grelin workers who were doing inventory in Bay 3. They're not showing on the exit logs. Vril's heart sank. Bay 3 was in the contaminated zone. He immediately ordered rescue teams to suit up, but the protocols would take precious minutes. Minutes those workers might not have. Security footage of the cargo bay showed the 2 Grelin collapsed near a storage container, overcome by fumes before they could reach the exit. The automated systems had sealed them in, prioritizing the safety of the rest of the station over 2 individuals. Then Mittens appeared in the frame. She stood at a sealed maintenance door, yowling loudly enough that the security feed picked up the sound. Her behavior was agitated, completely different from her usual calm demeanor. She pawed at the door, meowed again, then looked directly at the security camera as if she knew someone was watching. "What is she doing?" Vril demanded. Henry appeared in the security center without being summoned, alerted by the station-wide emergency. He watched the footage of Mittens for only a moment before speaking. "She's trying to tell you something. That's where your workers are. We know where they are," Vril said. "Bay 3, where the sensors detected them." "Not Bay 3, Henry insisted. "Wherever Mittens is. She found them." "That's Maintenance Corridor 7, Torvin said, pulling up schematics. "But that's nowhere near Bay 3. "Check it anyway," Orem urged. The rescue team redirected. When they breached the maintenance door where Mittens had been signaling, they found the 2 Grelin workers unconscious in a service crawl space, exactly where the cat had indicated. The gas leak had forced them to retreat through a maintenance hatch, too disoriented to communicate their location. Without Mittens' alert, the rescue team would have wasted critical minutes searching the wrong area. Both workers survived. Vril watched the security footage replay 3 times, trying to reconcile what had happened. The predator that everyone feared had just saved 2 lives. She'd found beings in distress, assessed the situation, and sought help in the only way she could. "I don't understand," he finally admitted. Dr. Nellis had theories, of course. Many Earth predators display pack-bonding behavior. Mittens may have extended that instinct to include the station's inhabitants. "We're not prey to her. We're part of her territory, which she defends. But we're not her pack," Vril protested. "We're not even her species." "Humans aren't her species either," Orem pointed out. "Yet she bonded with them. Perhaps that's another aspect of domestication we don't understand." The news of Mittens' rescue spread quickly through the station. The Grelin community, which had been most vocal about removing the cat, sent a formal thank you to Henry. Several other species began viewing Mittens differently, their fear tempered by what she'd done. Vril called another council meeting, but this one had a different tone. "I'm not saying we end all security protocols," he began, "but perhaps we've been approaching this incorrectly. The creature Mittens has proven she's not a threat. In fact, she may be an asset." "Are you suggesting we officially recognize a predator as a station resource?" someone asked incredulously. "I'm suggesting we adapt," Vril said. "Humans have been adapting to predators for their entire evolution. Maybe it's time we learned from them." The motion passed with surprising ease. Mittens would still be monitored, but the containment protocols were officially relaxed. She was free to patrol the station as she wished, provided Henry took responsibility for her actions. Henry agreed, though he pointed out that he'd never really had control to begin with. That night, Mittens returned to Henry's quarters on her own, ate her dinner, and settled into her favorite sleeping spot. Through the environmental window, the stars shone bright and steady. Somewhere in the station, beings who'd been terrified of her just days ago were reconsidering their assumptions. It was a small change, but on a station dedicated to harmony between species, small changes mattered. The Cozy Kettle had always been a popular spot on the promenade, but lately, it had become the most visited establishment on Harmony 7. Henry's cooking was good, certainly, but most customers came for a different reason. They wanted to see Mittens. Dr. Nellis had become a regular fixture at Table 7, his datapad constantly updating with observations. He'd overcome his initial fear through scientific curiosity, though he still hesitated before reaching out to touch the cat. Mittens tolerated his examinations with the patience of someone enduring a necessary annoyance, accepting treats as fair payment for her cooperation. Her purring vibrates at a frequency between 25 and 50 hertz, Dr. Nellis explained to Orem, who joined him for lunch. Studies from Earth suggest this frequency promotes bone density and healing in humans. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. The cat receives food and shelter. The human receives therapeutic benefits. Orem watched Mittens weave between tables, greeting regular customers with headbutts and leg rubs. It still seems remarkable that humans bred a predator for companionship. My people would never consider such a thing. But you're here, Dr. Nellis pointed out. Observing, learning. A month ago you wouldn't have entered this restaurant, it was true. Orem had progressed from nervous observation behind glass to sitting 2 tables away, to finally allowing Mittens to approach him. When she'd first rubbed against his taloned foot, he'd frozen in panic. Now he occasionally offered her small pieces of fish from his meal, marveling at the gentleness with which he took food from his claws. Henry emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of fresh pastries. Mittens, stop begging, he said without heat. The cat ignored him, having learned that Orem was a reliable source of treats. I don't mind, Orem assured him. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. How did humans first domesticate cats? Henry settled into a chair, happy to talk during the lunch lull. Archaeologists think it happened around 10,000 years ago. Humans started farming, which attracted rodents, which attracted wild cats. The cats that were less afraid of humans thrived because they had easier access to prey. Over generations, they became more comfortable around us. Eventually, we weren't just tolerating each other. We were choosing to be together. Choosing, Orem repeated thoughtfully. Not forcing, not capturing, exactly. Cats domesticated themselves in a way. They decided we were worth keeping around. Dr. Nellis added this to his notes. And other species? Dogs, you mentioned. Dogs were earlier, maybe 15,000 years ago. Wolves started following human hunting parties, eating scraps. The friendliest wolves got more food, bred more successfully. Humans realized these wolves could help with hunting and protection. It became a partnership, but horses? Dr. Nellis continued. I've read about horses. Humans ride them, use them for transportation. We do, Henry confirmed. But people also keep horses just for companionship. Same with many animals. The relationship evolved beyond pure utility. The implications of this fascinated Orem. Most galactic species had a purely transactional relationship with other life forms. Food sources, material resources, occasionally symbiotic partnerships for survival. But forming emotional bonds with other species, especially predators, that was uniquely human. A group of young Greln entered the restaurant hesitantly, their ears twitching nervously. Mittens looked up from her position near Orem's feet, assessed them with typical feline indifference, and went back to grooming her paw. The Greln children, emboldened by her lack of interest, crept closer. Is it safe? One of them whispered to Henry. She's friendly, Henry assured them. Move slowly. Let her sniff your hand first. The children followed his instructions, giggling when Mittens' whiskers tickled their palms. Within minutes, they were gently petting her fur, amazed by its softness. Their parents watched from the doorway, still uncertain but less afraid than before. This scene had become common over the past weeks. Species that had initially demanded Mittens' removal now brought their families to meet her. Dr. Nellis documented every interaction, noting the therapeutic effects on individuals suffering from station-related stress. Anxiety levels were measurably lower after spending time with the cat. I'm writing a paper, Dr. Nellis announced, about predator domestication and its psychological benefits. The implications could change how we think about interspecies relationships across the galaxy. Just make sure you mention that cats are individuals, Henry cautioned. Mittens is friendly, but not all cats are. And definitely not all predators. The conversation was interrupted by station-wide communication. A young Greln child was missing. The parents' voices, translated through the system, trembled with fear. Their daughter had wandered away from their quarters over an hour ago. Security teams were searching, but the station was enormous and a small child could hide anywhere. Orem stood immediately. I should coordinate with security. Henry had a different idea. He looked at Mittens, who'd perked up at the distressed voices coming through the speakers. You don't happen to know where scared kids hide, do you? Mittens tilted her head, then jumped down from her perch and walked purposefully toward the restaurant's exit. She's heading toward the lower decks, Patricia's voice came through Henry's communicator. The human engineer was monitoring from security. Should I open the access panels for her? Please, Henry said, following Mittens. Orem and Dr. Nellis exchanged glances and followed as well. Mittens moved with purpose now. her earlier lazy contentment replaced by focused determination. She led them through corridors most people avoided, into the older sections of the station where the lighting was dimmer and the walls showed signs of age. "This is near the original construction area," Dr. Nellis observed. "Lots of hiding spots for someone small." Mittens paused at a maintenance junction, sniffed the air, then slipped through a gap in the wall panels. Her meow echoed from somewhere inside, followed by a small, frightened voice. "There's someone in there," Orem said, pressing his communication device. "We need equipment to open this panel." "Let me try something," Henry said. He knelt near the opening. "Hey there. My name is Henry. Are you stuck?" "I can't get out," the small voice replied. "It's dark. I know you're scared, but you're going to be okay. There's a very brave cat in there with you. Her name is Mittens. Can you pet her?" Silence, then a tentative. "She's soft." "She is, isn't she? She's also very friendly. Just stay calm and talk to her. We're going to get you out." The rescue took 15 minutes. The maintenance panel had to be carefully removed to avoid damaging the structure. When they finally created an opening large enough, they found the young Greln girl wedged in a tight space, tears streaking her face. Mittens sat beside her, purring loudly, pressed against the child's side. The girl's parents arrived as the rescue team gently extracted her. They swept her into their arms, checking for injuries, overwhelming her with relief and affection. The father turned to Henry, his eyes wide with gratitude. "Your predator found our daughter." She kept her calm. "How can we ever thank you?" "Thank Mittens," Henry said. "She's the hero here." The mother knelt, bringing herself eye level with the cat. Mittens, still purring, allowed the Greln mother to stroke her head gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for protecting our child." Dr. Nellis captured the moment on his datapad. A species that had evolved as prey, showing gratitude to a predator. It was unprecedented. News of the second rescue spread even faster than the first. By the next day, the restaurants had a waiting list. Families wanted to meet the cat who rescued lost children. The Greln community organized a formal ceremony honoring Mittens, presenting her with a decorative collar that she tolerated for approximately 10 minutes before removing. Orem found himself fielding questions from species across the station. Could they bring their own animals? What other Earth creatures made good companions? How did one care for a pet? "We might need to establish some guidelines," Orem suggested to Henry. "If everyone starts bringing animals, we could have chaos." Henry smiled. "Welcome to human life. We've been managing that chaos for thousands of years." That evening, as Mittens napped in her favorite sunbeam, Vril made an announcement. The station council was officially establishing a committee to study human-animal relationships and develop protocols for companion animals on Harmony 7. They were calling it the Interspecies Companionship Initiative. It was, Orem reflected, a very long title for a very simple concept. Humans had learned to make friends with predators. Now the galaxy wanted to learn how. Sunlight filtered through the environmental dome above the cozy kettle, catching dust motes in its beams. Mittens lay stretched across the table nearest the window, occupying the prime spot with the territorial confidence of someone who knew she was welcome. Around her, the lunch crowd murmured in a dozen different languages, and nobody commented on the cat anymore. She'd become part of the landscape, as ordinary as the furniture. Vril entered the restaurant, no longer flinching when Mittens opened one eye to observe him. He'd learned over the past month that the cat's attention was usually brief and never threatening. She assessed him, determined he wasn't interesting, and went back to sleep. This was normal now. "Commander," Henry greeted him from behind the counter. "Usual order, please, and perhaps we could speak privately when you have a moment." They moved to Henry's small office behind the kitchen after the lunch rush subsided. Vril produced a data pad with evident reluctance. "A human transport ship arrives tomorrow. According to the manifest, 3 new residents are bringing animals with them." "What kind?" Henry asked, though he suspected he knew. 2 more cats and 2 creatures called dogs. There's also a hamster, which the database describes as prey species, but humans keep as pets regardless. Vril's mandibles clicked uncertainly. "I need your guidance on protocols." "I'm not an expert on all animals," Henry warned. "You're the only human on station with animal experience. Dr. Nellis has prepared documentation based on Earth databases, but practical knowledge would be valuable." Over the next hour, They reviewed procedures for introducing new animals to the station. Vril had clearly done extensive research. His questions were detailed, covering everything from dietary requirements to behavioral expectations to safety considerations. The dogs concern me most, Vril admitted. They're larger than Mittens. Some breeds weigh as much as a full-grown Greln. Dogs are different from cats, Henry explained. More social, more trainable. They need regular exercise and respond well to commands. But they're also loyal and protective. Good with kids, generally. Generally, every animal is an individual, Commander. Just like people. Vril absorbed this thoughtfully. The Council has authorized controlled introduction sessions. Species representatives have requested to meet the new animals before they're allowed in public spaces. Henry raised his eyebrows. Requested to meet them? A month ago, they wanted Mittens removed. Perspectives change when fear becomes understanding, Vril said. It sounded like something Orem would say, and Henry suspected the avian diplomat had been coaching the security chief. The new arrivals created considerable excitement. Viewing galleries were set up in the main docking bay, allowing curious onlookers to observe from a safe distance. Over 200 beings showed up to watch 3 humans disembark with their pets. The first cat was sleek and black, moving with liquid grace that prompted immediate comparisons to Mittens. The second was fluffy and gray, appearing less intimidating because of its abundant fur. But the dogs drew the most attention. One was a medium-sized brown creature with floppy ears that bounded down the ramp with enthusiastic energy. The other was smaller, white with brown spots, and seemed equally excited to explore new territory. Dr. Nellis documented everything. His initial fear of predators completely transformed into scientific fascination. Observe the social behavior, he narrated into his recording device. The dogs are actively seeking interaction with their humans, while the cats maintain independence but remain nearby. Different domestication strategies producing different behavioral outcomes. The hamster, a tiny golden ball of fluff, was barely visible in its transport carrier. Several observers asked if they'd missed seeing it, prompting discussions about why humans would keep such a small, seemingly helpless creature as a companion. Because it's cute, Patricia explained to a confused Orvan representative. That's really the whole reason. Cuteness as a selection criterion, Dr. Nellis mused. Fascinating. The introduction sessions were scheduled throughout the following week. Species representatives came in small groups to meet the animals in controlled environments. Orem, who'd become the unofficial ambassador for human-animal relationships, supervised these meetings. The first session paired the Greln community with the gray cat, whose name was Whisper. The choice was intentional. Whisper was calm, gentle, and less active than Mittens. The Greln children, already comfortable with cats after meeting Mittens, immediately warmed to her. Can we pet her? A young Greln asked. Let her sniff your hand first, the human owner instructed. Then gentle strokes like this. Within an hour, Whisper was surrounded by admirers, purring contentedly as multiple hands carefully stroked her fur. Parents who'd been skeptical found themselves smiling at their children's joy. The dogs presented different challenges. The larger one, named Bear, was friendly but boisterous. His enthusiastic greeting style, which involved jumping up to lick faces, terrified several smaller species. His owner worked on training him to sit calmly for introductions, but his tail still wagged with enough force to knock over lightweight objects. He's very strong, Vril observed nervously. He's also very gentle, Bear's owner replied. Watch. She placed a treat on the ground and gave a command. Bear sat perfectly still, trembling with the effort of not immediately eating the treat, waiting for permission. Okay. He delicately took the treat and wagged his whole body with joy. The demonstration impressed the observers. Here was a creature with considerable physical power, voluntarily restraining itself out of training and trust. It challenged their assumptions about predator behavior. The smaller dog Patches won hearts through sheer friendliness. She seemed to love everyone equally, and expressed this through constant tail wagging and gentle nuzzling. Even species representatives who'd been afraid of Mittens found themselves charmed by Patches's obvious joy at meeting new people. I'm beginning to understand, Orem said quietly to Henry, watching a nervous Dorvan representative laugh as Patches licked their webbed hand. It's not just about having a predator nearby. It's about the relationship itself. The trust, the affection, the connection across species boundaries. Now you're getting it, Henry replied. The hamster introduction was perhaps the most surprising. Many prey species found the tiny creature relatable, its nervousness and constant vigilance mirroring their own instincts. Yet watching humans handle it with such gentle care, seeing a predator species protect and nurture a prey species, raised profound questions about the nature of interspecies relationships. We assumed predator and prey couldn't coexist peacefully, a Greln elder said, watching the hamster burrow in its owner's hand. Humans proved that assumption wrong. By the end of the week, a remarkable thing happened. Orem submitted a formal request to bring his own companion animal aboard. After extensive consultation with Henry and Dr. Nellis, and review of his species' biological needs, approval was granted for a cat. The gray cat, Whisper, had bonded strongly with Orem during the introduction sessions. Her calm temperament suited his cautious nature, and the gentle vibration of her purring seemed to soothe his naturally anxious disposition. The paperwork was processed, care requirements documented, and Whisper officially became the first non-human-owned pet on Harmony 7. This is precedent-setting, Vril noted, signing the authorization. Other species will want to follow. I've already received 7 inquiries, Orem admitted. 3 ground families, 2 Dwarven individuals, and representatives from species we haven't even introduced yet. Dr. Nellis launched a database project, cataloging Earth's domesticated species, and matching them to potentially compatible alien species based on biological and psychological factors. Aquatic species might prefer fish. Species with strong family bonds might enjoy social animals like dogs. Solitary species might prefer independent cats. The work consumed him. Within 2 weeks, he'd created comprehensive guides for 12 different Earth animals and their care requirements. He cross-referenced this with the biological needs of 47 station species, producing compatibility matrices that would have seemed like science fiction just months ago. Henry's restaurant had to expand. The demand for his cooking had increased, certainly, but more importantly, beings wanted to visit the place where Mittens lived. The cat had become a minor celebrity, and the cozy kettle had become an unofficial animal sanctuary where people could interact with Earth creatures in a relaxed environment. Patricia, seeing an opportunity, opened a shop 3 doors down. She imported pet supplies from Earth and sold them alongside locally produced items adapted for alien physiology. Food bowls in different sizes and shapes, beds designed for various body types, toys that appealed to different playstyles. I'm making more profit here than I did in engineering, she told Henry cheerfully. Turns out there's huge demand for cat toys across the galaxy. The station's atmosphere changed subtly. Corridors that had felt sterile and purely functional now occasionally featured a dog walking with its owner, or a cat observing from a high perch. The presence of animals introduced an element of organic chaos into the ordered environment. Not everyone approved. Some species representatives maintained that animals were inappropriate for a space station. Safety concerns were raised, hygiene protocols debated, philosophical arguments made about the proper relationship between civilized beings and wild creatures. But the momentum had shifted. Too many people had experienced the comfort of petting a purring cat or the joy of a dog's enthusiastic greeting. Too many children had laughed while watching hamsters stuff their cheeks with food. The emotional benefits were undeniable. Vril stood in the observation deck, watching a young ground child walk past with her family's new cat. The child chattered happily to the animal, who seemed content to be carried. A human might have found the scene completely ordinary. For Vril, it represented a fundamental shift in his understanding of the universe. Humans didn't just survive on a predator-filled planet, he said to Orem, who joined him. They thrived by changing what it meant to be predator and prey. They rejected the binary. And now they're teaching us to do the same, Orem added, stroking Whisper, who purred in his arms. Below them, Harmony 7 continued its rotation, a little less harmonious perhaps, but considerably more alive. 6 months changed everything and nothing. The stars still wheeled past Harmony 7's viewports in their eternal dance. Ships still docked and departed on schedule. Beings from dozens of worlds still conducted their business in the station's commercial sectors. But now, woven through the familiar routine, cats napped in sunny spots, dogs trotted beside their owners, and the occasional hamster wheel could be heard spinning in residential quarters. The cozy kettle occupied twice its original space now. Henry had knocked through to the adjacent unit, creating what the station directory officially listed as an animal cafe. comfortable seating arranged around observation areas where visitors could watch and interact with various Earth creatures under supervision. The expansion had been Orim's idea, and Henry had to admit it worked beautifully. 15 species were currently represented among the station's companion animal owners. Not just cats and dogs anymore, though those remained most popular. A Dorvan, scientist kept tropical fish in an elaborate aquarium that doubled as a meditation space. A Greln family had adopted rabbits whose gentle nature and herbivorous diet made them particularly appealing to that species. Someone had even brought a parrot, though that experiment had nearly ended in diplomatic incident when the bird learned to mimic security alarms. Dr. Nellis ran weekly seminars now. His presentation on human-animal bonding psychology had become required material for xenopsychology students across 3 systems. Universities requested copies of his research. Scientific journals published his papers. He'd become the galaxy's leading expert on something that hadn't existed as a field of study 7 months ago. The implications extend beyond companionship, he explained to his latest class, which included students from 11 different species. Humans' ability to form bonds with predators suggests a fundamental cognitive flexibility that we're only beginning to understand. They don't categorize relationships as purely transactional. They create emotional connections across species boundaries that most of us considered impossible. In the back of the seminar room, Mittens slept on a cushion, occasionally featured as a visual aid when Dr. Nellis needed to demonstrate specific behaviors. She'd become accustomed to academic attention and tolerated it with typical feline indifference. The station's mental health metrics showed measurable improvement. Stress-related medical visits had decreased by 23%. Workplace satisfaction surveys indicated higher morale across multiple departments. Social cohesion between different species communities had strengthened, partially because companion animals provided neutral ground for interaction. Vril reviewed these statistics in his office, still somewhat bewildered by how thoroughly one small cat had transformed his station. His door was open now, a change he'd made after noticing how animals in the cafe seemed to reduce tension during difficult conversations. Sure enough, Whisper appeared in the doorway, rubbed against the frame, and entered without invitation. "Your owner is in his office," Vril told the cat, who ignored him and jumped onto the visitor's chair. "I suppose you can stay." He'd stopped trying to enforce rigid protocols around animals. They followed their own logic, and attempting to control them was exercises in frustration. Better to adapt, as humans had learned thousands of years ago. Patricia's shop had expanded too, now carrying supplies for 17 different species of Earth animals. She'd hired 2 assistants and was negotiating contracts with suppliers on Earth for regular shipments. The business was profitable enough that she'd quit her engineering position entirely. "Never thought I'd become a pet shop owner in space," she told Henry while restocking cat food. "But here we are. Earth's primary export to the galaxy. Friendship," Henry said with a smile. "Don't forget the pet toys. Turns out everyone loves laser pointers." The commercial success was real, but the cultural impact ran deeper. Other stations had begun requesting information about Harmony 7's companion animal program. Delegations visited to observe and learn. Some species remained skeptical, unable to overcome their evolutionary fear of predators. Others embraced the concept immediately, eager to experience the benefits humans had known for millennia. A formal Galactic Council inquiry had been launched to study the feasibility of standardized companion animal protocols across all stations. Orim had been appointed to the committee, his personal experience with Whisper making him an ideal representative. The hearings would take months, possibly years, but the direction seemed clear. In the environmental gardens where Mittens had first been cornered by security teams, a young human child played fetch with a dog while her Greln friend watched in fascination. The Greln's parents observed from a bench, no longer afraid, just curious about this strange human custom of throwing objects for animals to retrieve. "Why does the dog bring it back?" the Greln father asked. "Because he wants to keep playing," the human child explained. "He thinks it's fun. But there's no purpose to it, no goal achieved." "The fun is the purpose," the child said, throwing the ball again. This conversation, repeated in various forms across the station, captured something essential about the human-animal relationship. It wasn't always logical or efficient. It didn't optimize resource allocation or maximize productivity. It existed for its own sake, because the connection itself had value. Vril had come to understand this, though it still felt foreign to his fundamentally pragmatic nature. He'd caught himself talking to Whisper when the cat visited his office, explaining his problems to an animal that couldn't possibly understand station management. Yet somehow, it helped. The act of voicing concerns to a non-judgmental listener reduced his stress, even knowing the listener was a cat. Henry closed his restaurant early one evening to host a private gathering. The occasion was the arrival of Harmony 7's 50th companion animal, a milestone worth celebrating. Representatives from various species attended, many bringing their own animals. The cafe filled with the sounds of purring, barking, chirping, and the multilingual conversations of their owners. "I never imagined this," RM admitted, watching Whisper play with Mittens, the two cats chasing a toy across the floor. "When you first brought Mittens aboard, I thought it would end in disaster. Instead, it ended in interspecies understanding," Dr. Nellis added. He was taking notes, always taking notes. "You've facilitated a cultural revolution, Henry." "I just brought my cat," Henry protested. "You all did the rest." "You showed us it was possible," Vril said quietly. "That's not a small thing." The celebration continued into the evening. Children of multiple species played together, supervised by parents who'd bonded over shared experiences of pet ownership. Animals moved through the crowd, receiving attention, giving affection, existing in that liminal space between wild and domestic that humans had created. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, Henry sat in his quiet restaurant with Mittens in his lap. Through the viewport, he could see ships moving against the star field, traveling between worlds, carrying who knew what in their holds. Some of them probably carried animals now, he realized. Earth's influence spreading through the galaxy in the most unexpected way. "You started something," he told Mittens, who purred and kneaded his leg with her paws. "Hope you're proud of yourself." Mittens, of course, had no opinion on galactic cultural shifts. She was warm, comfortable, and being petted. That was sufficient. The next morning brought a new routine that had become standard. Security alarms sounded in Residential Sector 14. No one panicked. The automated message clarified. "Companion animal requires assistance. Non-emergency situation." The security team responded with amusement rather than weapons. They found a large dog who'd somehow locked himself in a storage closet, tail wagging apologetically when they opened the door. His owner arrived minutes later, embarrassed but grateful. "This happens about 3 times a week now," Vril told his second-in-command, reviewing the incident report. "Should we implement additional containment protocols?" Vril considered, then shook his head. "No. Just make sure the security teams know the difference between actual emergencies and animal-related mishaps. Speaking of which, update the training manual to include a section on common companion animal behaviors." "Understood, Commander." It was, Vril reflected, perhaps the strangest order he'd ever given. But it was necessary. Animals were part of station life now. They required accommodation, understanding, and occasionally rescue from their own curiosity. Dr. Nellis published his comprehensive guide to companion animals that afternoon. Titled Galactic Domestication, Learning from Human-Animal Relationships, it became an instant bestseller across multiple systems. The introduction summarized his findings simply. Humans had learned to coexist with predators not through dominance or fear, but through mutual respect and affection. This capability, this willingness to see beyond simple categories of threat and safety, represented something unique in galactic society. Other species could learn it. The residents of Harmony 7 had proven that. What had started with one stubborn cat refusing to be contained had grown into a movement that was changing how different species related to each other and to the concept of companionship itself. In the environmental gardens, now officially designated as an animal-friendly zone, a small memorial plaque had been installed. It marked the spot where Mittens had first been cornered by security, that moment when fear met calm indifference and the universe shifted slightly on its axis. The plaque read simply, "Here began understanding." Visitors touched it for luck or wisdom or just because it was there. Animals passed by without noticing, concerned with more immediate matters like interesting smells or potential napping spots. Life continued, richer and stranger than before. Somewhere in the station, a child laughed as a puppy licked her face. An elderly Grelm stroked his cat and felt his loneliness ease. A Dwarven watched fish swim in graceful patterns and found unexpected peace. A human chef prepared dinner while his orange tabby supervised from her favorite perch, unaware that she'd changed the galaxy. Harmony 7 rotated through the void, carrying its cargo of hopes, dreams, and an ever-growing collection of Earth's domesticated animals. The stars watched and kept their own counsel, as they always had. And in his office, Commander Vril filed a report stating that station operations were running smoothly. Companion animal integration was proceeding ahead of schedule, and morale had never been higher. He didn't mention that Whisper was asleep on his desk, or that he'd started keeping cat treats in his drawer. Some things, he'd learned, didn't need to be in the official record.